So Happy is a Delta-9 hemp-derived beverage, and the THC in it, which is very microdose, a small amount, is derived from the hemp plant. And this is different than the THC you find in dispensaries across the country in adult use legal states today, which is derived from the cannabis plant. So the THC is actually made emulsified from the hemp plant and totally naturally derived. And it becomes water soluble, and then it's mixed into a sparkling seltzer. And we have multiple flavors, and it's sold because it's legal, because the THC comes from hemp. It is sold in bars, liquor stores, even grocery stores in most states across the country.
So without getting too deep in the weeds, very much pun intended, what is the difference between hemp and traditional marijuana that you buy in a dispensary?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to talk about the hemp plant and the marijuana plant as sisters. So they share quite a bit of DNA, but they also have some differences. The marijuana plant tends to contain more THC, and therefore when you go into a dispensary, you'll often find, loose flower, as they call it, or vapes or other, edibles that are from the marijuana plant that contain high dosages of THC. The hemp plant tends to have more CBD than THC. So traditionally, CBD is actually extracted from the hemp plant, but it does contain some THC. So more beverages like Happy are extracting the THC from that same hemp plant, adding things like CBD as well, and then putting it into a beverage as we described. So the hemp plant and the marijuana plant have a lot of the same DNA and characteristics, but they do differ.
So it is a loophole that legalized these beverages, correct?
Yeah, I don't like to refer to it as a loophole as much as, it's how the Farm Bill was written. And it allows certain products derived from hemp, not all, but certain products to be sold and distributed more broadly. And we are absolutely in favor of regulation, by the way. We believe that these hemp products need to be regulated. They need to be safe. At Happy, we started in the regulated market, so we test our products, track and trace. We know where all of our ingredients are from, and we have a QR code on those cans that are in front of you, Dave, that show the COAs, so they are fully transparent about the testing of our products and the safety behind them.
But there is no governing body, no regulator that forces you to do so?
It depends on the state. Right now, much like marijuana, hemp is governed at the state level. So the Farm Bill allowed it to be sold federally, but the states have come in and put their own regulations in place. So it just depends on the state level regulators.
So there are in dispensaries beverages with well north of 100 milligrams in a small bottle, even a can. I see these contain 5 milligrams of THC. For those unfamiliar with dosage, which I think most are, how does that compare to a beer, to a cocktail, to a glass of wine?
Absolutely. We've dosed Happy intentionally to replace that glass of wine or that beer. So we say start low and go slow. If you're new to cannabis, something like a 2.5 milligram, which we also have, is that kind of glass of wine. And then over time, much like you learn your alcohol tolerance, you'll learn your cannabis tolerance. But in dispensaries, it is much more of a high-dosed, experienced cannabis market. And that's where you will find those 100 milligram drinks that are absolutely unsafe for the majority of cannabis users and for sure anybody that's new to cannabis.
How many players are in this space, and who would you say is the demo for Happy?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, probably between 5 and 10 very strong players nationally, meaning carried in multiple markets as well as likely sold online. And in terms of certain states that are more mature in this hemp market, so to speak, Minnesota being the most evolved, there's probably 250 or so players in that market. Happy is very squarely targeted at kind of everybody, but we have a very strong following with women. And I think it's interesting because women are looking in particular not only to replace alcohol, but to replace alcohol with a clean, healthy product that's hangover-free, low-calorie, vegan, all natural, and mostly safe to drink. And Happy is really hitting that sweet spot. So we're seeing right now, Dave, over about 75% of our consumers are in that female demographic.
I did catch a mostly safe to drink there.
Yeah, Happy is entirely safe to drink. Again, we want you to start low and go slow. I would just be very careful about which products you are buying and where you're buying from. So you mentioned Total Wine in your opener. They are an incredible partner, a fantastic retailer. They look at every single COA and approve every product that goes on their shelf. So it's really right now, because the regulations are not happening at the federal level and they're happening more at the state level, it's largely up to the consumer to make sure they are working with and they're drinking a trusted brand. So either purchasing from a trusted retailer like a Total Wine or from a trusted brand like Happy that tests and has track and trace in place and knows where we're sourcing all of our ingredients is really crucial for consumer safety.
That is helpful. Now, several states have banned the drinks. Representative Mary Miller of Illinois authored an amendment, in her words, closing the loophole that has allowed drug-infused THC products like Delta 8 to be sold to teenagers in packaging that looks like candy. She adds, we must stop teenagers and children from being exposed to addictive and harmful drugs. What is your response to that amendment and to Mary Miller?
Yeah, so the Mary Miller Amendment is extreme. We are in favor of regulation, not prohibition, like most of the governing bodies in the alcohol space. Prohibition doesn't work. We tried that 100 years ago in the alcohol space. We know it doesn't work. These products need to be regulated. There needs to be testing protocols. There needs to be packaging and advertising protocols in place. But the Mary Miller Amendment is just a one-size-fits-all, wipes it all out. And, prohibition can lead to, increased usage, can lead to black market products. Delta 8, for example, is a great example of that. Delta 8 is not naturally derived THC, it's synthetic and allows for a lot of contaminants and other things to be in the drink. So we are absolutely in favor of parts of what Mary Miller has said, prohibition of Delta 8, but we need regulation in this category and we need safety, not prohibition. And her amendment just takes it too far. And Dave, we're going to see more of this as we get into, a highly volatile year from a regulatory standpoint. We have the rescheduling on the table. We have the Farm Bill renewal. We're going to see more and more of this and absolutely need to call on lawmakers and have far more regulation. Now, one other thing I will say is the distributors are out ahead of the regulators, which is very interesting. So many of the distributors that Happy and other beverages are working with have put their own regulations in place and are requiring, as I mentioned, Total Wine checks the COAs on every beverage that they put on their shelves. More and more of this self-regulation by distributors and retailers is happening, so we know these beverages that are on shelves are safe.